Welcome back to another GTN Coaches Corner. As always, we've had a ton of questions sent in. I'm very much looking forward to getting stuck into them this week. But as always, don't forget you can send your own in using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Right. Let's go for it. First one from Matt QC5UG. I'm struggling to get my swimming heart rate up. It feels like I'm pushing hard on harder efforts with no significant improvement in pace. Could it be that strength is the limiting factor here? I'm not super fit, so it can't be that. Right. This is an interesting one because on one hand, you're saying you swim hard, but the heart rate isn't going up, but you also swim hard and the speed doesn't go up. Now, typically, to answer that latter part first, if you're swimming hard, but the swim speed isn't going up, it is pretty much always coming down to technique. You're perhaps just muscling your way through the water. You're not swimming very efficiently. You're sort of fighting against yourself. So you need to improve your technique, be more efficient. So you're gliding through the water. What you often find is when people start to work harder, they actually almost increase the drag and their technique starts to fall apart. So definitely something you need to focus on and work on there. But interesting that you're finding that your heart rate isn't going up either. Now, as I say, you would typically find if you're going to be working hard, your heart rate's going to be going up. I'm not really sure what's going on here. So it's perhaps actually that your optical heart rate sensor, if that's what you're using on a watch, maybe you're getting the interference of the water and it's not perhaps giving you the right heart rate for you. I'm not too sure, to be honest. But what I would say for most people, technique is the answer for trying to improve any speed in the water. Right, next one from Lizzo Beach 5179. Peeing on the bike. Great topic. Struggle too much with trying this. As a front pack swimmer, I almost always have to have people passing me on the bike and I'm embarrassed to even try. How far does it fly? Does it just go down the legs? Well, we're here to answer your important questions and I'm glad you enjoyed that topic. And it's very considerate of you to worry about spraying it on other people. Anyway, the simple answer is it doesn't actually go that far. And depending on the speed you're going, of course, if you're going downhill, maybe. But yeah, mostly it just goes onto your own shoes and down your legs, which is pretty gross, I know. But as I think I said in that previous video, just make sure you use some water to spray down on yourself after. Right, next one from Zarok487. Back of the pack age grouper here. I found when training for my first full Ironman that I have way more endurance doing breaststroke than any other stroke. I can only do front crawl for maybe 400 meters before resting. I was perfectly happy with my 2 hours swim time, purely using the breaststroke at my first full attempt at Lake Placid this year. Sadly, missed the bike cutoff by 10 minutes. My question in swim training for my next full in Ottawa next year, should I continue focusing on the breaststroke given that I'm still just working to finish a full, or is there any consideration towards doing front crawl or any other stroke? Very good question. Obviously, it goes without saying that front crawl, when performed well, is the faster stroke. It's the fastest stroke. And breaststroke is typically the slowest stroke. So in theory, it makes sense to try and do front crawl. I appreciate it's probably the one you're struggling on the most. However, you've got plenty of time to try and nail this. And in my opinion, it is the more efficient stroke over a longer period of time. So the simple answer, I would say go for it. And actually, I think just the reward of learning it and trying to be able to swim front crawl by summer next year will be absolutely amazing. You will absolutely benefit from it. And I think it is absolutely doable in that period of time. Right, Charlie Avid. I live and train at 2,500 meters of altitude and an average training temperature of 6 to 12 degrees Celsius. And I'm going to compete at sea level with temperature between 25 to 32 degrees Celsius. What are your recommendations to cope with these differences? I know altitude training has its benefits, but racing in the heat is tough. Whoa, this is quite a specific question. I'm wondering how many people also live at 2,500 meters of altitude. But yeah, interesting. Obviously, living and training at altitude, you are going to really reap the rewards of that. But as you say, the temperature may be a factor if you're going to be then racing at higher temperatures. Now, there is no single answer for this because someone that lives at altitude may have a really good tolerance of heat naturally and they may not sweat too much or lose that much sodium in their sweat, whereas another, maybe yourself, you might find you sweat a lot and you lose a lot of sodium in that sweat, and therefore actually how you cope in the heat may be very different to another. My very simple answer for you here is, with any race that you're doing, and this is relevant to anyone out there, regardless of living at altitude, is that you do want to prepare for the race as specifically as possible, be that on the terrain, the heat, and if possible, the altitude. So I would very much recommend trying to do some sessions where you maybe increase the heat indoors, so switching the fan off and trying to get it up to that temperature. If possible, maybe get down to sea level and also practice just at a normal kind of altitude that you're going to be racing at, and if you can, even getting onto that course, so you're actually just getting used to the terrain, the conditions, and everything with that. But yeah, good question. A few more. Boiler Hawk. I recently added clip-on aero bars to my road bike, but I noticed that the saddle is now uncomfortable due to the aero positioning. Do you have any recommendations for adjusting my road saddle besides raising it up and forward? Or will I need to go to a TT/tri saddle? Ooh, this is a good question. So I'm pleased you added that last bit in about raising it up and putting it forward. So when you put clip-on aero bars onto a road bike, a road bike, the geometry is very much designed for an upright riding style. As soon as you put clip-on aero bars onto it and you're leaning forwards, the bike was not designed with that in mind, and therefore the geometry doesn't really work. So what you do to try and compensate for that is raise the saddle up and forwards, and that keeps your sort of leg angle and reach to the pedals the same. However, as you'll find a lot more pressure on the front of the saddle. Now, a couple of things you can do if you want to try and keep the same saddle is just ever so slightly just tipping down the nose of the saddle, and that may just alleviate any pressure. But, and I've got a saddle here, Triathlon saddle. This is the Ergon, actually the women's specific saddle. They've got a couple of different options. You've got a mid riding style and a front riding style saddle. This is the front one. And you'll see that it's got a lot of cushioning around the front, but it's also designed for your position in mind. So with the pelvis tilted round more and sitting closer to the front of the saddle. So it's very well cushioned and accommodating for that sort of position. If I'm honest, I would probably recommend getting a Triathlon saddle. You will be so much more comfortable. I find with the road saddles also, they're a lot narrower at the front, so you might find you're just sort of rocking around and not that stable in your position. So whilst you may find you can get more comfortable, you just may not find you're as powerful. But yeah. Good question. Adrian Farrance. At every race I've done, I always see people training, riding or running the day prior. Sometimes with high intensities, every training plan I've used has the day before as a rest day or maybe a low intensity swim. Is training the day before a race helpful, or does it make you fatigued for race morning? Haha. Well, this is good. A lot of people do just sit on their backsides for the day before a race. The risk of this is that you end up feeling rather lethargic come race day. Again, there is no one answer for this, because if you are a relative novice to triathlon, the demands of maybe just going for a ride, a run or a swim the day before race day may be higher than someone that is an intermediate or advanced triathlete. Therefore, as you say, you don't want to tire yourself out before the race. However, as I say, you don't want to just sit on your backside and end up rather lethargic. So why you see people doing some short runs or rides and even some intensity and intervals is basically to keep the body awake and the muscles firing and ready to just go and get firing on all cylinders. So you'll typically see people doing intervals that aren't that taxing, but as I say, they're getting the blood flowing, the muscles firing. So it's working out what that level is for you that is not going to detract from the race performance the following day, but still get you primed and ready. Final question from Anitsamala Valley. Is there a thing as after race depression? I just did my first Ironman 70.3 in September and cannot get myself to get back to training regime before next season. Should I register on the next race already so I know I have to start training? Do some people experience the same thing? Absolutely. A lot of people call it post-race blues. So that race that you've been targeting, that event, has been such a big thing in your life for countless weeks and months, and then suddenly it's gone. And it's also been a big motivation for you. So numerous things happen here. Obviously, there is the fatigue post-race, and there's a whole sort of flooding of hormones and your body trying to recover from that hard intensity. And then, as I say, there's suddenly this kind of hole in your life. And it can be very easy to just relax for a week or two and sort of lose that drive and motivation. And then suddenly it all feels quite hard to get it going again. It's very important you do recover, but also at the same time, I find it's always good to just put little goals in. They don't have to be huge races, but even if it's just the smallest goal or event on the horizon that suddenly just get you back going and something to target and look forward to. But yeah, you absolutely are not alone. It is a thing. It's very common, and thanks for asking about it, because it's not something we've actually had many questions on before. But yeah, thank you again for all the questions. If you would like us to elaborate on any of these today, please let us know in the comment section down below. And if you've got any of your own questions, again, don't forget to use that hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. I'll see you next time.